guess my only excuse is I'm so excited to be back with everybody. So, there you go. Okay, any questions about the agenda? Hearing none. Any questions with the consent agenda? Okay. Number 6 and 7 we'll take care of Thursday night. Mr. Odom, I guess we'll start with 8.
And number 8 is financial matters, and this is a land purchase for Eagleville Practice Field. This amendment uses $44,000 from the Capital Projects Fund, account number 34685, committed for capital projects, in order to purchase 1 acre of land from John and Judith Turner for $40,000. The Turners will donate 2 acres of land as part of this purchase. The remaining $4,000 will be used for closing costs. This land will be used for practice fields for Eagleville High School. The lease for the existing practice field is being canceled. We are also asking the board to approve the land purchase contract with the Turners, contingent on the Rutherford County Commission approving the funding. Recommend approval. The motion is to amend $44,000 from account 34685, Fund 177, committed for capital projects, in order to fund the purchase of 1 acre of land for Eagleville Practice Field, and to approve the land purchase contract with John and Judith Turner as presented, subject to approval of funding by the Rutherford County Commission.
Questions or comments?
I'll just make a general comment that I think this is something that needs to be done. And the unfortunate thing, I think, is what they had out there before is the amount of work that was put into it. Unfortunate that we have to basically start again, but I think this is the right move from our side of it, is to try to get them something to practice on. So I'm in favor of it.
Very pleased with the generosity of the Turners. The 2 acres that they're giving us is quite valuable, and I mean it's right there on the main drag, and it's flat, and probably won't need a lot of work. So again, I want to commend them for their generosity.
That's certainly a great price. I mean, there's no question about that. And generosity is a good term. I agree with Mr. Hodge. The Rutherford County Conservation Board, and I think the school board also, has had some improvements on that other piece of land, and evidently we don't have a choice. We're just going to have to walk away from that. And that's unfortunate, but I think this is also a piece of land that is, and I'd really like Mr. Clardy to maybe comment on this. This particular piece of land, which is looking at the school, is to the right of the school, not the left. It's the right. And that piece of land, I would think, would be much more likely to serve the Eagleville community in the future than the other way. Also, we got sewer right there. Am I right on that? Or?
We have direct access from our existing property without getting on 99, or we can't enter it from 99. So it's a nice piece of property, nice and dry, and we really appreciate the opportunity to get that property.
Thought about that. There's also an existing road already right behind that piece of property, isn't it? Yeah.
I'd say there's a lot to be said for it not to flood. So. Yeah, and Commissioner Reed was intimately involved in securing that donation. So also grateful for him to intercede in our behalf, I guess you would say.
I move we approve, Mr. Chairman, and the next time we, if Mr. Hodge isn't going to do it next Thursday night, I will.
Anybody else? Okay, B.
B is a request for additional staff move to the $35 per month phone reimbursement. These are coordinators from the Department of Instruction. Mr. Zago is requesting that Amy Wise, which is your Title I coordinator, Nona Hall, ESL, Trey Duke, which is the part of our technology and RTI, Lisa Bogle, elementary coordinator, Barbara Powers, middle, Shirley Bell is your coordinator, special education, Phyllis Washington, secondary coordinator, and Tom Delbridge, who is coordinator of attendance. Our instruction department coordinators will be added to the list of those who are eligible to receive a $35 per month reimbursement towards the cost of their personal cell phones for work purposes. All of the coordinator positions require that they be out in the schools on a regular basis. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve adding our instructional coordinators to the list of those who are eligible to receive a $35 per month reimbursement towards the cost of their personal cell phones for work purposes.
I think this is an appropriate addition, and it seems minor, but sometimes it's the just the principle of the matter. Use of something that we consider to be personal property and a personal investment, and yet we're certainly using it to be effective in our work day. So I appreciate Mr. Zago bringing this, and Mr. Odom as well. I do want to point out, because in my own exploration of looking to pinch every penny possible, if there is any Rutherford County employee that is not aware, at least at Verizon, if you produce a pay stub from Rutherford County, up to and including even as a board member, there is a discount from that cellular provider for being a Rutherford County employee. So as you negotiate those personal contracts, don't forget that opportunity.
I believe at one time we're required, or maybe not required, but we provided a phone, so a principal or a department head may have their own personal phone and then a district phone, and that had to be tough to keep up with two different phones.
We have a few still that where we provided. One of the first phones I remember was our truancy officers, who actually had to go to homes and houses and all. That was one of the first ones I can remember. It's been many years ago, but the system did provide them with a phone because they were out with no way to contact back. And unfortunately, it happened after in Metro Nashville, there was a life taken of one of their attendance teachers and stuff and all. So it's just not always easy. So we did that several years ago.
We're on number 9.
Number 9 is proposed changes in Rutherford County Schools, the calendar for 2015-16, the academic calendar. And the recommended approval of the motion to approve the proposed change to the Rutherford County Schools 2015-16 academic calendar is presented. When the calendar committee met and we're working out so many years ahead and taking a look at 15-16, Josh did not realize it was a presidential primary day when we got to the March the 1st, but it is. Tennessee has kind of moved it up again. I looked at the Rutherford County Commission site. We have 21 schools that serve as polling places, the primary. So from a security standpoint, it just kind of is much better for us to be closed that day, because we have some where we do stay open with school, but in that particular case, it's usually a large turnout on a presidential election. So I think it would be wise for us to change it. And really what we did by taking it off, you still have to maintain the 180 days. We extended the school year by a day we would have ended on the 26th of May. We'll close on May the 27th. It actually is within the same week. So we just added the one day at the end. if people had already looked at the calendar and set aside vacation holidays, spring breaks, none of that was changed. It added one day to the last day in May was the change.
Strongly support that change. That's very, very appropriate.
Yeah, I think so.
Very appropriate. Any questions or comments about the calendar? Number 10, Mr. Holliday is our federal legislative representative, and wanted to bring to light some of the federal issues that we'll be looking at this, or at least be watching progress this year.
And one of the biggest things is that we do expect some progress this year, at least to get something out of Congress and to the President's desk. Whether or not it gets signed will be another issue. I would personally kind of start the conversation with thinking that something on education may be a whole lot more palatable and easier to get signed than some of the things that Congress is going to choose to send up to the President first. I wish that the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was before some of these other issues, and we might get a success before we get a veto, but be that as it may. I want to first thank the board for your support and confidence to be a part of the federal lobbying effort that we do. And for years, Wayne did a trip to Washington where we go and talk to the congressmen and senators and lobby them on behalf of the state of Tennessee for education issues. That's coming up at the end of this month, and we'll meet again the 26th and 29th before we do that. So this is not a conversation that we have to come to any conclusion to, and I would ask the chairman at the end of our conversation this evening that this issue would actually be taken off the agenda, because there's really no action and not a need to repeat it in our meeting. But in a work session kind of atmosphere, I wanted to raise that we expect that the Elementary and Secondary Education Act will be reauthorized through Congress this year. In 2002, this was what we knew as No Child Left Behind. It expired in 2007, and since then we've been under a waiver type of status where the state of Tennessee applies to the Department of Education and receives a waiver, and that results in a negotiation between the Secretary of Education or the Chairman of Education for the state of Tennessee and the Secretary of Education for the federal government. Those two individuals come up with a waiver, and that's the new authorization for another year. And year after year that takes place, and it's because Congress has been stuck since 2007, unable to pass anything and even present it to a president for his signature and reauthorization. So it's a good thing for this to be debated. It's a good thing for it to come out of Congress. We'll see if it turns out to be a good thing in the legislation. One of the big issues is testing, and we heard when we met with our legislators here in Rutherford County that how much do we test? Well, the federal government has something to say about that, and they're going to take up that issue as well. And the Secretary of Education on Monday gave a speech where he strongly asserted that a large number of standardized tests were very effective in being able to have measurable results in our schools and being able to report both to the parents and the general public at the level of performance of our schools. Now, what we use that information for is largely kind of a state-by-state effort, in that we put together a race-to-the-top plan, but it was individual state. So there's not something in ESEA, as I understand it, and Mr. Odom, you follow these things as well, jump in and correct me here if I'm wrong, but it's our state that decides what we do with that testing data. But the federal government does have something to say about how much testing we're going to do and how much is going to be mandated. And that's going to be a hot debate because there's a lot of pushback from the Common Core debate about how much testing is appropriate. by the way, I'm going to break for just a second. At the end of this, one of the questions we need to ask ourselves as a board is, well, that's all well and good, but we're Rutherford County School Board. Who's going to listen to us? Or that's all well and good, we're Rutherford County School Board, we're going to stand up and go after our congressmen and senators and make sure they hear from us. That's something that we've got to come up with. So as I'm explaining these things and going through it, that's what's kind of floating in the back of my mind. How hard do we really want to press on this? I'm not sure, but I'm very much interested in the board's feedback on that. So the amount of testing and also exclusions from testing. One of the big things about No Child Left Behind was nobody's going to get excluded. So no matter what your intellectual deficiency or your physical handicap or whatever the challenges are for your education, we've all heard the stories in the schools. It doesn't matter when you got there or what your deficiencies may be. If you're there on testing day, we have to test you, and your score absolutely gets counted. And so is there a reason to revisit exclusions from testing, or is the principle of No Child Left Behind, every child deserves their opportunity to put their score down and be counted correctly, which that kind of philosophy has kind of led us to issues of early intervention and response to intervention, and maybe a renewed effort of not just classifying somebody as, oh, okay, now I don't have to count your test score, but I got to count your test score, so I better get in there and figure out a way to make you effective as a student. And so, there's a good and bad on each of these issues. Another thing that they're going to be very much interested in is inclusion. And what's the term when we measure between a certain socioeconomic group and the norm?
Gap closure.
Gap closures, that's it. Okay, so our term is gap closures about that. They're looking for inclusion. Are we taking care of all of the appropriate minorities? Because that's kind of a federal big picture issue that they want to take a look at and make sure that no socioeconomic group is being left behind. They're still looking, though, at some of the civil rights issues and issues of diversity that are kind of outdated. And I think we do have something to say for 65 languages being spoken in our schools, and that diversity may have a better characterization in your ethnic background and your cultural background rather than the color of your skin or something of that nature. There are real challenges in teaching a student from Guatemala who has never been in school before and shows up in third grade. And we have that mandate as a public school system, and that may be more the definition of diversity rather than skin color or something of that nature. Not to diminish skin color in any way. Title I funding and the portability of Title I funding. A majority of the federal dollars are wrapped up in Title I funding. And as such, there is a push, and largely among Republicans, largely tied to the idea of charter schools and those type of alternative education opportunities to make Title I funding portable. That is, just like we talk about charter schools, it's funding pinned to the shirt of the student, and wherever that student goes, so goes their funding. If you hear about an increase in Title I funds and the portability of those funds, then all of a sudden we're creating a situation where a special needs child could be educated in a charter school. We understand right now in the public school system, it costs more to educate a special needs child than it does the average student. And that's why we say charter schools, while they may have their place in specific circumstances, they largely are not the answer, because it's only through the collective effort of pooling the funds together that we're able to educate 28 or 30 children in this classroom and 5 children over here in this classroom. We've got to have full funding of all of those students. You can't just hand the public school system the special needs children, because they take 120, 130, 150% of the amount of money that is allocated to them per student in order to actually educate them. When we pin Title I funds to the student and allow for portability of that at the federal level, we take a huge step in the direction of charter schools, and it would certainly be a blow to public education from my perspective. The next thing is kind of shift gears, Chapter 2, the Tennessee Promise, the Tennessee Achieve program, and how it is now being reflected by the President's recent announcement about 2 years of community college at no charge. Now, he's basically stealing this from us. Tennessee, we had this one from Governor Haslam, and Governor Haslam had it from his time in Knoxville, and it was a successful program in Knoxville that he was working with the community college there that he's now rolling out across the state. I've stepped into this largely to make sure I understand it and explore it completely. And in the Tennessee Achieve program, one of the requirements in order for you to get 2 years of community college at no cost is you have to have a mentor. So last week, there was a meeting at Laverne High School. There were 290 students there, all of them seniors at Laverne High School, and they were set in groups of 10 with a mentor that was a volunteer from the community. Now, I would love to tell you that if there were 290 students, that there were 29 willing mentors, but there were not. So there is one employee of the Tennessee Achieve program who has 90 of those students. But 20 of us do have 10 students apiece. And I'm proud of those in the community that stepped up and were mentors, and I joined with them. They required the mentors to go through a training class. So I spent an evening at Motlow going through a training class about what we do and what we do not do as mentors. And that's largely reflecting the same kind of training we get as board members of stay on the big picture. Don't get into the nitty-gritty of the problems. But the familiarity with the program and being exposed to it has shown me one of the goals of how do we pay for 2 years of community college. We create 100 different ways that you can lose that privilege and one very narrow path that you can succeed at it. So as a student, if you fill out every form correctly and on time, if you attend every meeting on time and sign in, and you keep your GPA correct, and you do this and you do that, then you can get all of this funding. But if you do one of those things wrong, if you mess up just one time, you're out and you never get it back. And that's one of the ways that when you look, into the nitty-gritty of these programs, they're almost kind of paper programs that buy votes, and yet how many students do they really help? Well, they can help a lot of Rutherford County students because we have the kind of community and the kind of students and the kind of parents that will help our students not mess up and keep those funding streams open to them. But we need to be aware of it, and we need to be committed to it, and it needs to be part of the discussion that we're talking about all day, every day, about making sure that we hit those landmark opportunities. And quite frankly, I think they've got a good system where we email on Mondays to all of those students and keep them heading in the right direction. If they're on Facebook, we hit them on Facebook. If they're Instagram people, we take a picture of the note that we want to send to them and then send it to them via that way. But somehow we connect with a 17 or 18-year-old, and it runs from the last 6 months of your senior year through the first 6 months of your time in community college or technical training. So it's not just a community college. One of the nuances that I think it's important for board members and those invested in education to understand is it's only a community college or associate's degree program. So you cannot use this at MTSU. You cannot use this at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. It is not a program that helps you there. And so this is only for a community college, a technical college, or you can use it at an institution that offers an associate's degree program like Austin Peay, but you can only use it for the amount of money that they would have paid to a community college, which is a smaller amount of money. So a lot of rules and regulations in that program, and it behooves the community and particularly those senior students with senior classification to really be aware of it. And juniors now as well, because the seniors, they're in the program, they're rolling through it. Juniors will need to get familiar with it for next year. It is a last dollar program in Tennessee, so all of your Pell Grants, any kind of financial assistance that you can get from any other means, all of that gets counted first, and then this program comes in and cleans up whatever balance is left. The last thing is that the Carl Perkins Act, like the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, is a separate federal piece of legislation. It concentrates on our career and technical program, and it actually is expiring right now. And so it's on track. It's not a waiver kind of system. It ought to be reauthorized in this congressional year. Whether or not it does, because we're trying to go back and clean up what should have been done in 2007, that remains to be seen. But we want to keep that on the radar and be aware of that as well. That's what I know.
Very well done. So you're now opening the floor for questions or discussion.
Please, yes.
My suggestion would be, from a board standpoint, Mr. Holliday's question was, should we do anything or shouldn't we do anything? Just my opinion, I think the issues that we feel strongly on, just like the Perkins, is being one. I think we, as a board, need to send a letter to our legislators, basically from this board, as a school board or as a school system of Tennessee, and let them know how we feel about it. You know, since they represent us, and I think we need to let them know something. If we don't, we're not being proactive, I don't think, other than you taking your time and voice yourself. I would think you going as a representative of the board, you basically carry it with you, or you write it up and the board signs it, or whatever the case is. But I think you need to have some kind of support behind you from the board.
I would think with Senator Alexander, I believe he's going to be chair of the Education Committee. Is that?
It's a Senate Education, Labor, and Pension Committee. So,
I mean, that's a very influential position, and having had the opportunity to represent this board in the past, you get to present yourself and your thoughts to our senators, be it on Tennessee Tuesday or going to their offices and meeting with our member of Congress too. So just those opportunities don't avail themselves on a regular basis, and with you representing our board and representing Tennessee, pleased that you're so fluent in the issues that we would like to see discussed. The other point is, not only would I like to see a letter accompany you from the board, but maybe also every individual board member write our senators and a member of Congress too. I think that would have a little bigger bang for our buck, if that's possible.
well, let me extend myself then that on the Carl Perkins authorization, since Mr. Hodges has brought that up, I'll have a letter. If it please the chair, we'll leave this on the agenda and we'll convert it to a letter on the Carl Perkins bill. And by noon tomorrow, I'll send that through Mr. Odom and Ms. Michaels and get that out to all the board members so that you can review it before the meeting. But if we don't find anything objectionable there, we may approve a letter on Thursday then.
We probably need to tell our TV audience what we're talking about in Carl Perkins.
Please.
The Carl Perkins funding is primarily for career and technical education. It is one of the ways that we in Rutherford County can replace some machinery and things as it wears out. And it's been funded for a number of years, and it just really is beneficial, certainly to the Rutherford County boys and girls from Rutherford County Schools, career and technical education, and taxpayers in Tennessee. Because it's a statement of we support this particular area of education, not just the academic, but the things that involve some of the hands-on, some of the other things that we do. So it would be significant if we lost that. Is it 500,000 or so? It's a pretty large figure. What is that, Jeff? Am I close? It's probably at least for Rutherford County, probably at least 500,000, I would think, somewhere in that range.
One of the things in the debate, the early debate, which is really going on among the pages and the aides to these congressional people as they write this legislation right now, the debate is, will we continue to see more of the carrot type of funding where they say, here's $500,000, who's got the best proposal for it? And so, all across the nation, there are all kinds of proposals that come out, and, a very few get the benefit, but the federal government gets to receive commitment for change from a whole lot of people. You put in place all of this change, and we're going to commit to do this and commit to do that in hopes of getting this funding, but then the funding only goes to just a few. And so it's a way that the federal government says, hey, we get more bang for our buck here by dangling out this opportunity. In Carl Perkins, rural school districts in Tennessee, quite frankly, expressed concern about Carl Perkins being funded in a similar way, as opposed to the number of students that are enrolled in a career and technical program, that it would be funded through, if you're able to provide a mechatronics program or, a automotive paint and body program or something like that, then we'll fund you. Well, not every rural district can pull that off. They sometimes have to work with what they've got, and we're blessed in Rutherford County to be able to do that. What we have to think about as our system is a continued commitment that we found here at the central office to writing excellent grant proposals and pursuing every single dollar. We see that when we look at, and to the viewing audience or anyone else, we see that when we analyze Rutherford County and the percentage of money that comes from the federal government, from the state government, and from local taxpayers. And Rutherford County does a fabulous, fabulous job of grabbing every possible dollar from the federal, from the state, and then using very judiciously the local dollars that do come to us. A higher percentage than a lot of our other neighboring systems come from federal and state in Rutherford County because of the effectiveness of our central office. Their ability to report accurately what we're doing in Rutherford County, and also to write excellent grants that make the case for the dollars coming here and being spent correctly, help us in funding so much. And our central office is to be complimented for that.
They call it Carl Perkins Reserve Funds. Kay Nixon was very good about being, if some districts didn't use all of their Carl Perkins, or, it's a lots of paperwork and tracking. Some choose not to if there's not a lot of money on the table for them or other issues. And so she just year after year was writing reserved grant requests for that and received many of those. So very good.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday. Between now and Thursday, some other ideas may come to board members, and we'll revisit this with your letter, and there may be further discussion or possibly questions. Okay. Mr. Hodge is our Tennessee Legislative Network representative, and really hadn't set aside a time, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't give you an opportunity to share a few thoughts with you also, sir.
Well, I spoke to the chairman yesterday in regards to the legislative session coming up. I think it basically starts, 2 weeks? No, they're down there right now, but
Actually, it kicks in tomorrow, I think, in
the actual sessions?
I think they start
Okay.
today.
I think everybody got the TSBA stuff last week in regards to what they feel like the big issues are as far as the resolutions and all that, and just my personal opinion, I think, there was 5 of them, and I see 3 of them being important, to me, which I'm sure the other board members also. I don't think we need to entertain, or I don't think we need to send a resolution. We did enough that last year, and I don't know how far that got us. But I'm a firm believer that if we don't speak up, we're not doing our job as representatives of the school system. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels on that, but I think we pick out some of these items. This is just my perspective. Pick out some of these items that we feel strongly on, like the charter schools, the fees, increasing the fees on that for the amount of time that's involved with it. Well, let me just go over them. The inspection fees, you know, that's for outside getting documents and stuff like that. Having that piece of legislation, and they got the maintenance of effort was another one. Then the charter fees, as I mentioned, those tuition discount. We on state level, I don't personally, I voted against it, and I think probably a lot of the rest of them did too. But so from my perspective, that's not a big issue. It may be other board members, but then the last one was a BEP improvement. You know, if we want to address that, I think going back to last year's, one of our big issues was not only the charter schools but the vouchers, and I think we need to continue on the vouchers. And I know we heard the legislators basically say that it's not going to have effect on us, but you can be assured once it gets started, it'll be here. And so that's a big one to me. I don't know about the rest of the board members, but I think if we're going to do something, you know, we ought to get something down there to them. So whatever the board feels like, or we do it ourselves. But I think as a board, doing it with all 7 of us probably has a little bit more impact versus each individual. That's just my opinion.
Comments from the board?
I agree wholeheartedly. I had a conversation, I'm going to mess up this last name, Phil Edelberg, I believe is his last name, that Middle Tennessee Christian director, and the conversation that I had with him was about vouchers and about how vouchers impact between public and private education. And it's serious. It's something that sometimes I hear our legislators say that really won't affect Rutherford County because we do have great public schools. That is shown clearly in the fact that we don't have any charter schools in this county. We have only had 1 or 2 applications for charter schools. There are very, very few holes. You have to look really hard to find a hole in the education opportunity that Rutherford County offers. And that's what the charter school system right now is set up. You know, if there's something that's failing or not working, then you can propose a charter for it. And it's just not there in Rutherford County. But likewise, there are very few private education opportunities. There are some, and there are those who take advantage of them. But if we go down the road of vouchers, I believe there will be additional private school opportunities in Rutherford County. And when you think about private school opportunities in Murfreesboro, what might open when you offer vouchers? That's worth thinking about.
One of the most interesting debates right now is in the state of Ohio, dealing with charters and vouchers. And what happened there, they've been at it for many, many years, but people were creating charters, and then we're turning around and selling the same people. We're selling services back to the charter to keep the funds, such as the food, such as the transportation, such as the other. And so it's gotten so tough if there's pending legislation, state level up there, to try to clean it up, because it was kind of an incestuous thing that began to develop from people that started the charters. But it's really been an interesting debate there. I've been following some of that.
And I would hope by Thursday, after considering what's been said tonight, is that, especially on the state legislative level, that we would pick out maybe 2 or 3 issues to really fall behind and press our legislators, rather than several. It kind of gets lost in the wash if we support too many things. So, Chairman Hodge, if you kind of guide us again on Thursday and get a pulse, maybe even have a pulse tonight as to what I personally would like to see us, the vouchers, the expansion of the charter schools. Those are 2 I really would like for us to continue to communicate with our legislators, not only as a board but individually. Get their emails and their cell phones and their home phones, and talk to them as other people, as other constituents would. So, stay hot on their heels, if you will. Any other thoughts by any other board members? If not, maybe Thursday you may chime in your thoughts as far as what you would like to see this board pursue through correspondence. Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Well, we're now with general discussion. Almost feel like we've been doing that for the last few minutes anyway. So.
I did provide you with a sheet tonight, if you want to take a look at it. It's the attendance for today. It provides you several pieces of information. So I ran this today. It says at 1:16:27 is what it says. But some interesting pieces, because I get questions. Is the flu hitting us? How bad is it? If you'll look down under the last column, average daily attendance percent, there it is by school, you're at 94.86. So right now there's not that's pretty much normal, about 95% attendance, so we're not seeing that. The column just to the left of that is MBR's, your membership numbers. And so your membership numbers is roughly 41,538. And of course, that number changes almost daily if somebody moves in, out, leaves, whatever it happens to be. Don't pay a lot of attention to the unexcused number there, because when children return tomorrow, they'll bring a note or a doctor's note. That number goes down considerably. You can't pay a lot of attention to that one. You have to look out 2 or 3 weeks to see how that one does. But another little thing that we really haven't talked about much, I do know that the city schools and Dr. Gilbert has even asked our legislators, is there something you could deal with? Look at the tardy column over there. So today, tardy at school, we had 1,294 tardies in schools. So you can kind of see that's the first numbered column after your schools. So it kind of lets you see how that might be, and you can see why it is a concern, because if they're not there, you're not teaching them. And very often in your elementary school and younger schools, it's not the child's fault. But anyway, I just thought you might find that as interesting information.
Is it worth breaking down the tardies? Because, of course, it jumps out that the highest numbers are in the high schools. Is it worth breaking it down to see how many are juniors and seniors? Because then it becomes possibly not so much a parent issue as their car riding or driving.
I think you can. I'm not sure whether this particular report allows you to check the grade, Well, yeah, it could be, because I had to choose K through, do you actually choose K through 12 to do that? You can do some of that.
I'd be curious to see that, because if it's a personal initiative of our students, we have a little extra control over their motivation.
You know, I used to say, what I would tell students very often sometimes when I was teaching and all, if I were an employer, one of the things that I would ask, I'd like to see, as much as they're academic, I'd like to see your school attendance record. Because I'll almost guarantee you, and you work in human resources, almost guarantee you that that pattern that they have in high school is likely to continue when they're employed. Ms. Moore, what do you say there?
You've actually given me a good idea for our recruiting process.
Mr. Chairman, I noticed, did you want to say anything at all tonight about county commission committee meetings at all?
Thank you. I made myself a note, but I didn't bring it with me.
Well, Health and Ed is the 27th, which is 2 weeks from tonight. And I notice on here, Ms. Michaels, you'd be just fascinated to know this, but whatever we present, Mr. Sandvik and Director Odom present on the 27th, if it goes immediately to the budget, which I certainly hope that it does, it'd be February 12th. So that probably needs to, I hope we have important business with the Budget Committee that night. I hope we do. We may not, but I hope so. That may be something we'll look at, because we may have to change the plan. I don't know what we'll have to do. Health and Ed have to look at, I guess. So.
Well, our instructions, I think, from you is to present that first year of a 5-year funding plan.
Right.
That figure and those items. There's been one adjustment in it. It probably was the Eagleville thing from the estimated costs there and what we've been able to purchase for that. That would be an adjustment, I think.
Yeah, we've already got
But
to
that's
change.
that's our intention.
Yeah.
You know, Jeff didn't think we would have to bring it back to you because those were estimated figures necessarily. If you approve the concept of those items, that we don't necessarily have to vote again about subtracting those dollars away from Eagleville. Just make that adjustment in the estimated funding.
We're going to have to, the plan is to get this first year, which was 57.6, wasn't it? Is that right? Into the hands of the Health and Ed Committee tomorrow, but soon. I mean, we meet 2 weeks from tonight, and I know I always appreciated having that, you know, in advance, so I could at least look at it.
It may keep us from being delayed, them having it in their hands early. It would like to strongly encourage every member of the board, if possible, to attend. They certainly need to see not only our smiling faces, but our support of what we approve. So, if all possible, let's try to be 100% in attendance that evening.
They start their meetings 5:30, right?
Yes.
I believe so.
Ms. Joyce, would you help remind all of us of that intention? Also, Thursday, remind me of the 15-second rule, since I kind of jumped the gun tonight. So. Anybody else as far as general discussion? We'll be back together again Thursday night, and board members, after we adjourn, you are required to stay a little longer for some IT training. So don't run off quite yet. So again, last chance. Anything else to discuss before we adjourn? Happy to see everybody. Safe, happy New Year. Looks like it worked out for all of us. So see you Thursday. We stand adjourned.